So we're back with more Oscar predictions. Today I'm going to be doing both the supporting acting categories and both screenplay categories. But first, I want to go back and make some revisionist changes to my Oscar predictions from a couple of weeks ago, just because I have a couple of light changes. First off, in Best Picture, I have Wicked now in my 10 slot. I feel like with the reactions to Wicked, there's so much buzz around it, and also just it looks like Gladiator 2 is good. That is what I previously had at my 10. But the longer I thought about it, the more I was like, I just can't see Gladiator 2 and Dune Part 2 inhabiting the same Best Picture race, especially if Wicked is also good. You know, I think Dune 2 is getting in for sure, but I see Wicked at this point over Gladiator 2 for Best Picture, so that is where we're at. And another way I convince myself is just Dune Part 1. It did really well at the Oscars, and that was a Part 1. So why can't Wicked Part 1, but not saying it's a Part 1, do well at the Oscars, despite the fact that it is Part 1 of 2? So with that, I've also thrown Cynthia Erivo into the lead actress race. I have her just right under Nicole Kidman, a slightly different color, just in terms of the fact that I don't think she is as likely as Nicole Kidman or Demi Moore, but I have her in the same tier as like Tilda Swinton and Marianne Jean-Baptiste. So I think that there's a chance she could get in, especially if Wicked is like that good. But we'll see. Also for lead actor, I have replaced both Sebastian Stans with Nicholas Hoult, now that we know that Juror Number 2 will be getting a light Oscar push. Do I think Nicholas Hoult has the best chance? No. But I think he has a better chance than Sebastian Stan does for A Different Man or The Apprentice, so here we are. So for supporting actress, I think it's a pretty wide open race. I think Zoe Saldana and Danielle Deadwyler are pretty locked in for Emilia Perez and The Piano Lesson respectively. I think Zoe Saldana could possibly sweep the Oscars. I loved her performance in Emilia Perez. I can't wait to watch it when I'm recording this video on November 12th, so I am so excited to get to see that movie again tomorrow when it comes out on Netflix. And yeah, I'm literally I'm counting down the hours at this point. And Danielle Deadwyler, it seems like she is kind of carrying The Piano Lesson. When people watch The Piano Lesson, they come out of it and they were like, wow, Danielle Deadwyler was amazing. That is the immediate reaction to that film. So it just kind of feels like she is destined for that Oscar nomination, and for that to probably be the one Oscar nomination for The Piano Lesson. After her, I have Felicity Jones for The Brutalist. I just feel like Felicity Jones will probably get in there with how much love I expect The Brutalist to be getting. And now here's where I think things get interesting, because I have 5 candidates who I have in the same tier, starting off with Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys. It sounds like her performance is amazing in that film, and I am kind of expecting Nickel Boys to be getting a lot of love at the Oscars this year, just thanks to how ingenious it seems to be as a film. And given that Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor is a well-established actor, if anybody is going to get an acting nomination for Nickel Boys, I expect it to be her. And if it's really going to be getting as much love as I think it could, I totally could see her sliding right in here. And after her, I have Ariana Grande. You know, from what I've heard and from what I know, supporting acting categories are really good for musicals, and she has a great role. It's Ariana Grande, and, she has a good musical sequence or two. I mean, that can just carry her in. So right on the outside looking in, I have Saoirse Ronan for Blitz. Now, I was very close to putting Saoirse in my top 5, because I feel like she has a very similar case for Danielle Deadwyler, where when people walk out of Blitz, it seems like the immediate reaction, that's a positive reaction, is, wow, Saoirse Ronan was great. However, because Blitz, I think, was expected to be really good, thanks to how successful Steve McQueen has been as a director, the initial reaction to that film in general is, oh, I'm kind of disappointed. And then it's, at least Saoirse Ronan was good. Well, I feel like for the piano lesson, there just wasn't as much of an expectation there. After her, though, is Selena Gomez, who I just don't feel too good about. I've heard a lot of people talk up her Oscar chances, which is why I have her in the same tier. But I don't feel too good about her because she's just not in the movie that much. Like, she's there at times, but like very infrequently, and has a couple of good songs, but I just feel like she's overshadowed by Zoe Saldana in kind of every way in Emilia Perez, and I feel like you could get a lot of situations where they're being compared, and it's just hard to compare because Zoe Saldana's performance is just massive, and Zoe Saldana is really just cool in this movie. Well, Selena Gomez just isn't in it enough, at least in my opinion. Same deal with Isabella Rossellini, where she has one fantastic scene in Conclave, but aside from that, she's just kind of walking around and observing. So, like, we've seen people get nominated for supporting categories because of one great scene. I could see her being one of those people, but right now I do have her on the outside looking in. After her, I have a bit of a teardrop here for Natasha Lyonne and Toni Collette. Natasha Lyonne for his three daughters. I think her, Carrie Coon, and Elizabeth Olsen are all deserving of nominations, but chances are none of them are gonna get nominations because it just doesn't look like Netflix is putting on much of an Oscar campaign for that film. But if anybody were to get nominated for that movie, I think it would be Natasha Lyonne. She's just the most prominent in the film. She has kind of the biggest character change. She's sort of the focus of the film. So I think it would go to her. Lastly is Toni Collette, who is starring in Juror Number 2 as a prosecutor. It sounds like she has a lot of really big scenes, so just a lot of Oscar moments for her. And honestly, like, if the buzz for Juror Number 2 can be sustained, because even though it's only played in 50 theaters, in the US, everybody who's seen it has been like, oh, like, this is a really solid film. And we've seen before, like, Clint Eastwood getting his supporting actors nominated. I believe a supporting actor, Richard Jewell, I can't remember if it was an actor or actress, got nominated for Richard Jewell, and that was Richard Jewell's sole nomination. I could see that happening, especially with how open these bottom two spots seem to be. I think supporting actor is so much more simple. So Kieran Culkin for me is my number one. He is supposed to be incredible in Real Pain. I can't wait to watch that in a few days. Like, really, I am so excited to watch Real Pain. Clarence Macklin at number 2, I think, for Sing Sing. Like, to me, he's pretty locked in to get a nomination. Like, he's playing himself. He is a former inmate. Like, there's just an incredible story behind that. So unless Sing Sing, like, really 100% disappears off the board, I am not taking Clarence Macklin off of here. After that, I got Guy Pearce for The Brutalist. He's supposed to be really good in The Brutalist. There's been a lot of buzz about him. And again, like, The Brutalist is a film that is going to do very well at the Oscars. So that is like my top 3. I feel really good about all of them getting nominations. I also feel really good about my bottom 2. You know, this doesn't feel nearly as open as, you know, previous races have. So at 4, I got Denzel for Gladiator 2. It seems like a match made in heaven for him to get this supporting actor nom and to slide right in there. Like, when people are coming out of Gladiator 2, one of the first things that I'm hearing is Denzel is fantastic. Like, he's really in this film. It's not just what was in the trailers. And he's great, he's awesome. He's probably gonna get an Oscar nomination. So here's where he is for me. And at 5, I do have Stanley Tucci. I've been hearing some people say that they don't think he's in the movie enough, but in my opinion, I thought he was. I thought he had a really solid amount of screen time and just a really nice presence, a lot of like Oscar-y type of moments, and a really interesting performance. I feel so good about this top 5. Of all of my top 5s, I think this is the top 5 where I'm like, I can see it going exactly this way on Oscar nomination day. And it's November and I'm saying that, you know what I mean? And somebody that a lot of people I know are talking about is Yura Borisov. Sorry if I butchered that at all. I feel like he's almost a Charles Melton for this year, where critics are going to love him, they are going to eat him up, but at the end of the day, he is pretty unknown going into a category filled with really well-known actors, and that just puts him at a pretty big disadvantage, and his performance just isn't big enough where he could be in a position like Clarence Macklin. So I don't see really any room for him. And then after that, I have Edward Norton in a complete unknown, just because it's Edward Norton, you never really know. And lastly, I have Brian Tyree Henry for The Fire Inside, where he plays the coach. He's supposed to be really good, and it seems like the Oscars do really like Brian Tyree Henry. I know a few years ago he had a surprise nomination for Causeway, so I could totally see him actually like slipping into getting a nomination. I feel pretty good about Brian Tyree Henry as a dark horse type figure for Best Supporting Actor, if there is even anybody that could be the dark horse, because this top 5 just feels so strong. Alright, so for original screenplay, I do have Anora, The Brutalist, and A Real Pain, all just very strongly in there. I think that they're all going to be Best Picture noms, so I think they will totally land an original screenplay nomination. But after that, that's where things get a little tricky for me. I have Blitz at 4. And that's because I think Blitz will also be a Best Picture nominee. But my issue and contradiction with that is that when I see the reviews of Blitz, the weakness of Blitz that keeps getting pointed out is the screenplay just not being that great. So although I have Blitz here, I just don't feel that good about it. After that is September 5. I think if September 5 is gonna get a nomination, I think it'll be a screenplay nomination. I could totally see it being a lone screenplay type of movie. Pretty similar deal with Saturday Night, which I have a couple movies down from that, where it's in a TV studio with a bunch of TV people, a big ensemble, and just stressful. So I could see either of those films, or even both of those films, getting nominations. Then I have The Substance, and The Substance, it's just such an interesting case. It won the Screenplay Award at Cannes. It has a really strong screenplay, very interesting, and just not a lot of dialogue here in this film. So I'm very interested to see if the Substance screenplay could like slide in, especially since it seems like just the longer like we've now been in Oscar season, the more popular this upset type pick of The Substance has been, which is really interesting, and it's going to be so interesting to follow just throughout Oscar season. So following those up, a tier down, I have Seed of the Sacred Fig and All We Imagine as Light. I have them grouped together because I just think, I already talked about this in the last part, but these are the two films that seem like if we're going to get an international film, aside from Emilia Perez having a Best Picture nomination, it looks like it'll be one of these two movies. So because of that, and I have them just here for original screenplay, because there's a decent chance if they get a Best Picture nomination, or if they kind of rise in the Best Picture rankings, they will rise in the screenplay rankings. And then after them, I just have Challengers. It's an amazing screenplay. It doesn't look like Challengers is coming back to do battle during Oscar season, but I wish it was, because it is incredible. So I have it here anyways. All right, so wrapping things up here with Adapted Screenplay, where it feels pretty safe, like this top 5 feels pretty locked in. My issue is that I feel like Dune Part 2 is very snubbable. So let's just talk about it for a second. At 1, I do have Conclave. You know, it's a wonderful screenplay. Super tense. Political thriller, or it feels like a political thriller. I keep calling it a political thriller, and then I realize it's technically like a popal thriller, I guess you could say. But either way, like it has that type of vibe and that type of energy. I have Sing Sing following it up, just a really solid screenplay, but again, just Sing Sing just is falling down the ranks. It feels like A24 kind of fumbled things, and they are just lucky that there's not too much tough competition for a lot of these awards, where it'll probably get a nomination anyways, because it's just that good. Emilia Perez is following that up. I'm not like, I think the Emilia Perez like screenplay is okay. I think it's the type of thing that could get snubbed, but again, just not a lot of competition, so it's probably gonna get in there. Nickel Boys. I haven't seen Nickel Boys. This is the only movie in the top 5 that I haven't seen. But I do feel very good about it getting in because not a lot of competition, and so many people who've seen it just think it's one of the best movies of the year. And even though a lot of that is because like of really interesting filmmaking techniques, I think that will carry over to love for the screenplay. And finally is Dune Part 2. I think Dune Part 2 has an excellent screenplay that really like it just works on improving on the things that people had issues with for Dune Part 1, which is really neat, and I really appreciate that personally. But I just feel like Dune is something that's gotten snubbed at the Oscars before and can get snubbed again. That's why I think Denis could possibly get snubbed, and that's why I think the screenplay could get snubbed. But then I'm like, well, what would it get snubbed with? I have 3 other options that I feel mediocre at best about, like sliding in over Dune. Wicked's a part 1. You know, at least Dune Part 2 is like the part 2 of 3 and sort of feels like the Empire Strikes Back of the franchise. Like, Wicked you can kind of make the same argument for. So, like, I don't want to slide Wicked in there. A Complete Unknown, it doesn't really look that screenplay-y, I guess I should say. You know, I mean, maybe it'll come out and it's gonna have like a really great screenplay. It's gonna be like, okay, well, The Complete Unknown's gonna slide in there, but it doesn't feel like it's gonna be a Best Picture nominee, and it doesn't feel like, you know, the screenplay is gonna be that incredible. And same deal with The Room Next Door, where people just aren't crazy about the film. So I'm like, all right, why would I put The Room Next Door in my top 5 over Dune Part 2? So yeah, I think all 3 of these movies are contenders, but I just don't see any of them being able to outdo Dune Part 2. So those are my Oscar predictions. A lot of interesting awards. I definitely think the most interesting race that I covered today is supporting actress. I think that's going to be very interesting to keep up with in the coming weeks, months, however long. But a lot of these other ones feel like they're already starting to get locked into place a little bit. With that being said, thank you all for tuning into this video. Please let me know your thoughts on my predictions in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I would love to have a discussion. If you want to keep up with me and what I'm doing with film outside of YouTube, I do a podcast once a week called What the Film, which I will link the Spotify to in the comments. I also have a Letterboxd, so I'll link that too. Feel free to check me out there, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.